begins here, with a siren call from the Defense Support Program satellite. Silently, these satellites scan enemy territory. A brilliant flash suddenly erupts from the ground. Somewhere a missile is launched, and the enemy thinks his fire is unseen. But a digitized image electronically relayed to a U.S. military ground station unleashes in 45 seconds a 21st century arsenal of stunning speed and ferocity. Such was the opening of the Persian Gulf War, the ultimate technology war, as General H. Norman Schwarzkopf called it. Never before had the hardware of battle enjoyed such popularity. Never before had America so keenly romanced its own armaments. But what's so special about these weapons? What is it that makes them as fascinating as the men and women who go into combat with them? What are the forces that indelibly link technology and war? It has been said of war that the side with the smartest gadgets will prevail. To make sure that America's weapon systems keep pace with technology, military experts are continually altering and improving them. Today, weapon systems are built so they remain flexible, which allows them to be molded and adapted for a specific battle function. Modern weapon systems share several key characteristics. They must be able to detect, locate, and lock on to a target. They must do so with the utmost secrecy and speed, and they must be accurate and have a high probability of survival. The underlying power of these new arms exists in technology. From the territory of integrated circuitry and electronics, microprocessors, laser guiding systems, computers that line up target runs for pilots, electromagnetic radar jammers, and infrared sensors. Technologies that are present in your car radar detector, your microwave, your fax machine, and your cellular phone. While the concerns of war have been the same for centuries, the need to move rapidly, strike enemy targets, and defend one's own forces, the emphasis on where weapons are deployed has changed radically. Increasingly, air power is becoming the primary military force. Advanced airborne weapon systems have helped our armed forces excel, as witnessed in the Persian Gulf War. But no one technology can take all the credit for turning the tide. It was the resourceful combination of technologies, both new and old, that helped the Allied forces gain the upper hand. To be invisible to your enemy is a traditional military strategy. To attack stealthily before you can be seen. It was a stealth fighter that fired the first shot in the Persian Gulf War. The image of it dropping a 2,000-pound GBU paveway-guided smart bomb through the roof of Baghdad's main communication center came to represent war's high-tech focus. The F-117A stealth fighter is the world's first operational aircraft designed to pass through enemy territory undetected. Its angular bat-like form is covered with radar-absorbing tiles. fitted all over the fuselage in an arrangement called faceting. Their angles are carefully calculated to deflect and scatter radar waves. For an aircraft flying a strike mission, the ability to foul radar is essential. For U.S. Marine Corps Colonel John Sullivan, all aspect stealth will be an integral part of future tactical fighters.
If the mission, as in Iraq, if the mission is to go in and take out the air defense systems, the command and control systems, and to do that with precision bombing, low risk, then you want to send in a stealth vehicle. And right now, particularly in built-up areas, such as in and around Baghdad and other cities, where you want to avoid collateral damage, you want to ensure that you hit the target with military value and not other targets, then that requires a manned vehicle to do that. And that's a perfect operation for a stealth vehicle.
This single-seater fighter is flown by pilots of the Tactical Air Command's 37th Tactical Fighter Wing. The F-117A can employ a wide range of weapons and features sophisticated navigation and attack systems that makes the pilot's job easier. The F-117A's dark cousin is the B-1B bomber. Another top-of-the-line strategic penetrator, the B-1B is an essential part of America's defenses and can carry both nuclear and conventional warheads. With unique warning systems and terrain-following radar, the B-1B is a very potent fighting machine. Its real strengths are its maneuverability and its acceleration and control response. This agile, high-speed aircraft is almost impossible to shoot down and can carry a payload greater than that of the B-52 and drop it with greater accuracy. While every aircraft will eventually have to have some degree of stealth, the high cost of the technology currently prohibits all aircraft from incorporating it. But the lack of it doesn't necessarily detract from air supremacy.
Stealth has an important role to play, but it's rather a limited scenario. And the air war, as we saw it fought in the Persian Gulf in Operation Desert Storm, was the classic air war that we would like to fight, and that is we go in first and we knock out their command and control. We knock out their enemy air so that there is absolutely no opposition to our forces. And when we have complete air superiority, so what if you're not stealthy? If you can knock down the surface-to-air missiles, if you can knock down the AAA that the other guys got, you don't have to worry about being stealthy.
If not stealthy, what then? Fast? Agile? Powerful? The F-14 Tomcat is America's air-to-air top gun. Able to travel at speeds well over Mach 2, its remarkable record in head-to-head combat is unparalleled. Its highly maneuverable swing wings automatically adjust to a given flight regime. Swept back for supersonic flight and swept forward for low-energy motion in close encounter dogfights, its swift, smart missile release is controlled by the AWG-9 radar system. For Grumman's Mike Fusco, it is the most advanced radar system in the world.
The radar has a very powerful transmitter, and it's able to scan a very large volume of space, looking for targets at very long ranges. Once it finds detections, it can track those targets for as long as it's in its scan volume. It could track 24 or more targets and then allow the operator to employ missiles against them. The F-14, if it doesn't want to be radiating RF, it also has an infrared search and track system, so it can passively look for targets at very long ranges without the enemy detecting that you're there, because you're not radiating anything. The F-14 also has a television camera set that can magnify an image at a long range and allow you to ID a target at a much longer range than you could with your normal eye.
Speed, power, and grace. Before the advent of stealth technology, our tactical fighters were designed to outmaneuver their Soviet counterparts. Aircraft like the F-15 Eagle and the F-16 Falcon are both extremely fast, highly maneuverable, and are designed to gain and maintain air superiority in aerial combat. With hair-trigger acceleration, the Eagle is the first U.S. operational aircraft whose engine's thrust exceeds the plane's loaded weight. This allows it to accelerate rapidly, even in a vertical climb. The F-15 is equipped with highly advanced electronic systems and weaponry to acquire, track, and attack enemy aircraft. It is capable of carrying a wide variety of arms, including Sparrow missiles and Sidewinder missiles. When the pilot changes from one weapon system to another, visual guidance for the selected system automatically appears on the head-up display. The F-16's key mission is striking ground targets behind enemy lines, but it's also formidable in air-to-air combat. Truly an aircraft for the 21st century, its lean form allows tight and fluid motion. The Falcon's characteristic bubble canopy affords the pilot almost 360-degree sight lines. The cockpit includes a heads-up display and multiple CRT screens that offer instant updates on navigation, engine performance, or weapon status. The new F-16s are equipped with Lantern, low-altitude navigation and targeting infrared for night system, and a global positioning system that increases accuracy of position, velocity, and time information for coordinating all weather-accurate bomb hits. As technology continues to evolve, so does the role of the manned aircraft. Where we once had the luxury to build fighters only to fight other planes, and bombers to just deliver ordnance, we now require more of our aircraft. To be able to fight their way to targets, deliver bombs or missiles, and fight their way back to friendly airspace. Advances in the F-14 and F-15 and F-16 have given them this capability in the Persian Gulf. Once air superiority has been achieved, these aircraft were sometimes called upon to do both roles. But only one aircraft has been designed from the ground up as a fighter and an attacker, the F&A-18 Hornet. The F&A-18 is equally effective in air-to-air combat and mid-range ground attack. This single-seater aircraft is structured for traditional strike applications and close air support. Its excellent fighter and self-defense capabilities multiplies the Hornet's strike impact, providing operational commanders with combat flexibility. Equipped with a thermal imaging system and a night vision targeting system, it has a ceiling of over 50,000 feet and an attack range of 550 nautical miles. The F&A-18's weapons includes the 20mm Vulcan cannon, Sparrow 3 missiles for fighter missions, Sidewinders for attack missions, and both guided and conventional air-to-ground radars. To execute their missions, pilots rely on their ability to acquire a target, known as target acquisition, identify it, attack, and eliminate it. In the past, it was incumbent upon the pilot to navigate his airplane to a point where he could look outside and recognize the target, which created a high degree of exposure to enemy fire. Today's technology helps the pilot locate and lock in targets from distances far beyond his visual range, an innovation much appreciated by A6 pilot Mike Shawn.
If I could shoot a missile from 60 miles, I would much rather do that than have to fly the airplane and overfly the target, because as you can well expect, anything that's valuable enough for me to call a target is probably valuable enough for the enemy to heavily defend it. And if I have to fly through that, no matter how much high-tech stuff I've got in the airplane, I'm giving him plenty of opportunities to shoot at me, and I don't want to do that. I mean, the cost of a missile may be high, but compared to the loss of an airplane and an air crew, it's a very cost-effective trade-off.
Of all the buzzwords to come out of the Persian Gulf conflict, the term smart weapons has been the most widely used and abused terminology. By definition, a smart weapon is one that is autonomous, which can find the target without anyone telling it where the target is. While this concept sounds good, the reality is that few weapons are completely autonomous. They all need human guidance of some kind. Some are guided by radar, like the AMRAAM, or Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile, designed for launch and leave and multiple target engagements. The pilot can detect a threat, lock onto the target, fire the AMRAAM, turn, and go on to the next target as the AMRAAM continues to pursue on its own its predetermined mission. Some are so fast that the target has little time to outmaneuver it, like the Phoenix missile. Once fired, the Phoenix travels at speeds in excess of 3,000 miles per hour and can cover over 100 nautical miles. But smart isn't always better. According to SDI specialist and former B-52 pilot Steve Fout, the oldest plane in the inventory proved to be a useful tool in pinning down and destroying Iraq's elite Republican Guard by using dumb iron bombs and lots of them.
In one B-52, you put 55 to 60, maybe as many as 80, depending on how you load the airplane, 500-pound bombs. Let's take a middle number, 75 500-pound bombs that you bomb in an area and just say, take that area, and if you're in there, you're dead, versus trying to put $75 million weapons. You can't afford to do that for very long. So what you do is you take the high-tech weapon to go into an area where you require this precision. You know exactly where the target is. You want to eliminate collateral damage. Saddam Hussein tried to hide a lot of his command posts and things like that in civilian areas. Without precision-guided munitions, we couldn't go in and get them. You give me that PGM where I can literally stick it down the heater vent, and you tell, well, Mr. Hussein, I know where you put it, and take that. And I do it with one weapon. I can't do that with the B-52. But I can't afford to bomb the area with the precision weapon. So you actually need both.
No weapons have sparked the imagination of the American public more powerfully than the two showstoppers of the Persian Gulf conflict, the Patriot missile and the Tomahawk cruise missile, two of the smartest weapons made today. Dr. Jack Ledger of the U.S. Army's Intelligence School explains how the Patriot has already found its way into American folklore.
I think the best story I heard that came out of here, this whole thing, was how people interpret what's happened, and the interpretation of the Iraqi lieutenant reporting to Saddam Hussein and saying, they've been shooting those Patriots at us, but we got every one but one.
The Patriot's radar station pinpoints incoming rockets and low missile launches. The single radar, using phased array technology, provides all tactical functions of surveillance, target detection and tracking, and missile guidance support. During battles, the only manned element on the unit is the engagement control station for automated operations. But how accurate is the Patriot?
It's a very good high-altitude system, which later gets rolled in through SDI into being a last-ditch ballistic missile defense against nuclear weapons. Now, let's remember, nuclear weapons. So it's against high-flying aircraft, fast movers, and nuclear weapons. That's what it's built for. We roll it into Israel, Saudi Arabia against a Scud, which is a fast-moving ballistic missile, but not a warhead anymore, so you don't have the same amount of time. If you're talking strategic ballistic missiles, you got 35 minutes worth of time. Scuds, you're talking 8, 9, 10 minutes worth of time. Got to react much faster. He's not going as high in altitude, may not be quite as predictable. It still hits him. It hits him with unbelievable precision. Got a lot of shrapnel on the ground. And there were some critics that said Patriot didn't work because parts fell everywhere. He says, now wait a minute, let's go back and look at how this was designed against a nuclear warhead. Now, it's going to go up and blow a nuclear warhead up, and there's going to be some shrapnel fall. There's going to be a little bit of fallout around. I'm going to give you a choice. A little bit of shrapnel around or a nuclear detonation. Your pick. I'll take a little bit of shrapnel. No sweat.
A Navy spokesman once said of a Tomahawk cruise missile that it was possible to aim at RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C., fire it from downtown Boston, and target it right between the goalposts. A highly survivable weapon The Tomahawk is nearly impossible to shoot down because its very small cross-section makes radar detection difficult. Navy Captain Bill Neville of the Naval War College explains how the Tomahawk has expanded power projection for the Navy.
The Tomahawk cruise missile that was featured being fired off the battleships during the Gulf War is a smart weapon. It's a weapon that once it's fired, you no longer have to maintain a track on it. You no longer have to continue to communicate it with it in flight in order for it to reach its objective. It embodies terrain following technologies, radars that look down, that match that radar picture with a preloaded picture of what route it should fly, and essentially then becomes a pilotless vehicle, but with a digital pilot, if you will, that is able to follow a pre-prepared route and strike a target using radar signatures to make the identification.
Picatinny Arsenal is the free world's largest armament research and development facility, where the U.S. Army is working on new weapons that will one day have to be even smarter. Vincent Marchese, Chief of Improved Sensing Munitions, explains.
We had the luxury in Iraq and Kuwait of having air cover, and we were able to designate with lasers where the targets were. In the next confrontation, we may not have that luxury, and in a lot of cases, the Army can't control what the Air Force is going to do with respect to designations. So that the next generation of munitions, which we are working on, will find the targets all by themselves without having to have somebody designate them, and that eliminates a person having to fly forward or be on the ground forward of our own troops, because artillery normally fires 15 to 18 miles away, and to have somebody up there to shine a laser beam on a target is impractical. So what we would like to do is come up with munitions which are slightly smarter than the ones that we did use, ones that can go and find the target by themselves with the same effect, and not even expose the person with the laser beam.
Picatinny Arsenal is responsible for the development of SADARM, or Sense and Destroy Armor, a truly smart weapon.
SADARM will look out over the battlefield before it begins its engagement, determine what kind of a day it is. Is it cold? Is there snow out? Is it raining? How windy is it? That sort of thing, and determine just how to set up its parameters.
6 pods are launched over the battlefield inside a missile. At a predetermined point, the submunitions are dispensed, so you get a pattern of SADARMs in the air. 6 at a time. Each one will individually search out a target and fire an explosively formed projectile.
We can take this metal liner, pack a couple of pounds of explosive behind it, and as long as it's within the submunitions case, when the explosive goes off, we can tailor the explosive and the dimensions on this liner so that the force of the explosion will turn this disc inside out, so that this part becomes the leading part of it, and the force of the explosion imparts a tremendous velocity, several thousand feet per second. The weight and the velocity is essentially the kill mechanism. We are generating a bullet while we are falling. There is no bullet in the submunition when it starts. There's just this liner. But this liner, by the force of the explosion, is transformed into a bullet that looks something like this plastic model. Okay. What we've done is we've made a machined model of something that only exists for a few fractions of a second, and then upon impact causes an awful lot of devastation.
The same technology is being used in WAN, or Wide Area Mine, the latest in mine technology. It detects acoustically and seismically that a vehicle is approaching and fires a warhead over the top of the target, which detonates the explosively formed projectile. A ship is one of the most adaptable platforms for high-tech weaponry. Most of the classic vessels of the Navy are veterans of several battles, and while their older hulls haven't changed much, their decks have undergone many radical transformations in the theater of war. They are the floating stages on which men and new war machines interact to create a total fighting environment. Captain Billy Cornett, an operations professor at the Naval War College, is a specialist in sea control and war at sea.
The issue of war at sea is always to try to reach a little further than what you have as an enemy. If you find that you can't reach out further to get him before he can get you, then you need to protect yourself. Technology has taken us to the point where we feel much more comfortable at sea. Technology also extends to the issue of command and control and bringing individual ships together as a fighting force at sea. We're able to work not just as a ship at sea, but the extension of aircraft, which includes naval air, Air Force air, Allied air, and to, if necessary, project force or to project power, which it would involve for the Marines and the Army.
Among the battleships, destroyers, cruisers, and carriers, the technology that adds metal to their force is the Aegis system. The Aegis, integrated as part of the vessel's armory, was designed as a total weapon system. From detection to kill, the heart of the technology is an advanced automatic detect and track multifunction phased array radar. This provides a ship with the capacity to search, track, and guide missiles simultaneously for over 100 different targets from wave top to overhead. In effect, the boat becomes a floating operational missile site. This allows a vessel not only to protect itself, but to protect others that are in company with it. By collecting and analyzing data, the Battle Force commander can see what's going on a real-time basis and make critical decisions rapidly that can affect how you fight the enemy.
First of all, if you have determined that it is a hostile platform, the decisions that have to be made are the type of weapon system that you want to employ against that platform. Having determined that, then you want to determine who has that type, and you assign that platform or that force to engage that particular enemy. Having made those decisions, the next decisions are, if that engagement fails, who is going to back that engagement up, and so on and so forth. Destroy the thing which is launching the weapon rather than trying to kill the weapon itself. The weapon becomes a very difficult target, as you can imagine.
Each type of vessel has a unique role in the defense pattern at sea. Aircraft carriers fulfill the primary role of sea control, projecting power ashore. Their mission is to deliver combat aircraft that engage in attacks on airborne, ocean, or shore targets. Such flat tops as the Nimitz and the John F. Kennedy continue to be the centerpiece of U.S. maritime strategy. Together with their embarked wings, the carriers have vital roles to play in strikes across the full spectrum of conflict. The pride of the fleet are the Iowa-class battleships. The Missouri and her sister ship, the Wisconsin, are both battle veterans of the Gulf conflict and have conducted sustained combat operations at sea worldwide. Combinations of modern weaponry has transformed these old sea bells into superior fighting platforms, and they too carry an inventory of new arms such as the Tomahawk and the Harpoon missile. Destroyers such as the Arleigh Burke also carry the Aegis system and operate in support of carrier or battleship groups, amphibious groups, or replenishment groups. But primarily, their function is to perform anti-submarine warfare. Bill Neville explains how all these new technologies work in harmony at sea.
There are varied and numerous tools in the toolbox. Depending on the mission and the defenses surrounding the objective, you will go back and do your mission planning from that perspective. In a heavily defended objective, particularly against aircraft, then you would do what you saw done in the Gulf, where you would first roll in a wave of cruise missiles. Once those have penetrated the defenses, then you would follow it with manned aircraft. If it were within the range of the battleship's naval guns, you would then proceed to bring the battleships in close enough and take them under fire with naval guns. The Navy now fights the battle at much further distance than it used to. The World War II engagements, where you were essentially in visual range, are no longer those which we hope to bring about. We hope that all the engagements, and that's what we train for, will be done well over the horizon.
Much of the Navy's projected power takes place under the horizon. The attack submarine has been roaming the world's waters for decades, and as retired Captain Timothy Soames explains, the submarine was the original stealth technology.
I think most people fail to recognize that long before we invented stealth aircraft, we had a stealth platform which was highly successful in 2 world wars. Almost brought Britain to its knees in the First World War, and then we were successful in essentially isolating Japan because of its stealth capabilities. The modern attack submarine has been developed to such a high degree of stealth that it literally is undetectable by any nation, so it can move any place in the world's oceans and launch its cruise missiles, in the case of an attack submarine, without your opponent knowing that they're being launched until the missiles strike the target. They don't know the launch platform's there. They're not aware that the missile's coming in. Literally, it's absolute surprise, which is what happened in the case of the opening salvos against Baghdad and Iraq.
In an effort to carry this technology into the 21st century, the Navy is working on a new class of super sub. The Seawolf is quieter than anything they have produced before. The nuclear-powered Seawolf will feature highly sophisticated sonar systems, more firing capacity, use a variety of electronic sensors and fire control processing equipment, and will include laser-guided missiles, vertical launch and tracking systems for both the Tomahawk and the Harpoon missile. It is a paradox of high-tech weaponry that the technological features that make them such swift and efficient machines of destruction can also minimize devastation in a war. The more complex the hardware, the faster the counteroffensive is implemented, the swifter the battle is resolved. Thus, fewer casualties are incurred. This is evident in one of war's most dangerous episodes, the engagement on the ground. But here, as in other battle arenas, new technology is changing the methods and strategies of ground fighting. Defense analyst Colonel Tom Springer explains how.
Technology has changed, whereas the centerpiece of our warfare in the Army was the tank. What we saw here in the Persian Gulf is technology has allowed us to maybe use as a centerpiece, or one of the co-centerpiece with the tank, the helicopter.
The world's premier attack helicopter is the Apache AH-64, a unique combination of grace and power. The Apache is built for speed, immediate surprise attack, and agility. It has its own form of stealth and is versatile enough to rise up suddenly from behind a hill, engage and terminate the enemy at fairly close quarters, and make a speedy and victorious escape. Tough and adaptable with devastating firepower, it is designed to fight and survive in any war theater in the world. Covered with a ballistic-tolerant skin, it is able to withstand hits from rounds up to 23 millimeters. And it has the ability to fight at night as easily as it does during the day. But the key to a helicopter's success is speed.
The distance that it can cover, the type of munitions that it can carry, it's able to respond quickly, and it's able to fire missiles from a look-down mode. The vulnerability on most armored vehicles is from the top. with the ability of the new missiles that they can put onto the helicopter, they're able to destroy tanks or armored vehicles exceedingly well.
The most advanced feature of the Apache is found in the pilot's helmet. As he turns his head to look at the target, his Hellfire missiles follow. This futuristic advance seems to be taken from the back lot of a science fiction movie.
One of the things that you see that you may have seen in the movies when you talk about the Apache pilot is in his helmet he has the capability of moving and detecting his target and firing from the optics that he does have in his helmet. These are things that you saw maybe 5-10 years ago in the movies, but now that type of technology is being used.
But as good as that technology might be, we will still need to face each other head on. As the Persian Gulf War showed us, there is no finer armored ground vehicle than the M1A1 Abrams tank. With crew survivability and its agility, the Abrams is the most effective combat tank the Army has ever fielded. It weighs in at a hefty 63 tons, but can hit close to 42 miles per hour with a full combat load. Used mainly for closing with and destroying enemy forces, the Abrams combines mobility and superior firepower to gain the field. It is the ultimate hit-and-run weapon, endowed with high science electronics. Its armored steel skin, made of depleted uranium, protects its crew from high-impact assault. It also has extraordinary night vision capabilities.
Even when you had the smoke and problems that you had in the Persian Gulf, where the tanks, the T-62 that they were equipped with, were unable to see our tanks because of being obscured by the smoke. When you talk about the laser and you talk about the night vision sights that we have, we were able to go through the smoke. And so you were firing on them and destroying them before they even know you were there.
The M1 isn't the only high-tech weapon that's used during a ground confrontation. Though not new, the Bradley M2 infantry fighting vehicle is the Army's wheels for mechanized infantry and is a speedy, fully tracked, lightly armored fighting vehicle. Its relative, the Bradley M3, is the scout and cavalry's conveyance for screening, reconnaissance, and security missions. Both vehicles have a two-man turret with a mounted 25mm automatic stabilized cannon, which is its primary weapon. But for more aggressive firepower, the Bradley shoulders the TOW missile system. Among the items of the Army's interactive hardware, the MLRS, or Multiple Launch Rocket System, is a free flight area fire artillery rocket system. On the field and in a tight spot, the MLRS is a very critical presence for forward troops in ground action. It supplements cannon artillery by delivering large volumes of firepower in a short time against key targets. The basic warhead carries conventional munitions, but room for growth in the system does exist to add a terminal guidance warhead and a sense and destroy warhead. One of the ultimate goals of technology is to help develop munitions that will become force multipliers by their effectiveness on the battlefield. This will help to further the armed forces' doctrine of downsizing the number of soldiers we hope will be fighting wars in the future.
We're talking about fighting on a battlefield, one that has fewer soldiers. It's too expensive to have armies the size that we have. The other is, when you look at a battlefield, it's going to be widely dispersed. As we saw in the Persian Gulf, it made no difference when the Iraqis decided to mass forces. They were able to be detected by technology from great distances, by satellite and by other types of radar detecting systems that are on our aircraft. And so every time they massed, they were destroyed.
A push-button remote control war where weapons will wipe out other weapons and military sites, sparing civilians is the dream of many. Despite the sense of unreality in the black shadow of a stealth bomber, or the amazement one feels at seeing a Tomahawk on course as it decides to make a right turn, it is unlikely that humans will ever be left out of the weapons loop, no matter how complex the technology gets. But what's in store for the future? The vital linchpin in the new military technology is the power of advanced electronics to gather and disseminate critical data about our enemy. Dr. Jack Ledger is a senior intelligence research advisor at the U.S. Army Intelligence School and a specialist in the modern art of electronic warfare.
Well, of course, electronic warfare is associated with all the wizardry of electronics, but really, conceptually, it's a very basic thing. It has to do with manipulating communications primarily of whomever your threat or enemy is to your benefit and guiding your communications from having him do the same thing to you. For example, in the air-land battle, which was really given a test in the Persian Gulf, the central core of that is intelligence. Okay? The collection, the knowing of the enemy, the knowing from far out where he is, what his capabilities are, how he's moving, what he's doing, what the indicators are, and so forth. Those same indicators, those same parameters, are the things that steer electronic warfare.
But intelligence gathering isn't new, just the way we go about doing it.
But if you look back in your Civil War books, you see balloons, you see people peering down from balloons, gathering intelligence. So as the nature of our communication, the nature of our ability to move changed, we began to adapt and, all of those means to the gathering and utilization of intelligence. When we got to electronics, it became very apparent that it could be not just a gathering thing, but it could be an active thing to disable or whatever the enemy's capabilities. So really what we're looking at now is a combination of looking at command, looking at control, looking at communications. We put those together, and they form an intelligence base for us to take actions on the battlefield.
The real benefit of electronic warfare is in the closing up of boundaries across the spectrum of the armed forces as they unite their firepower, soldiers, and new weapons in a unified effort.
One of the real watersheds in this Operation Desert Storm was the integrated use of all forces, air, sea, and land, to produce an overall effect against the Iraqi forces, which caused literally systemic failure. They were unable to cope with the fact that we were coming at them from the sea, from the air, and from the land simultaneously, and moving in such a rapid pace with the entire force control orchestrated, if you will, in such a manner that they were unable to cope. And what happened is we saw wholesale surrenders. It was this very ability to manage very large forces that gave us the ability to put these forces in a very short period of time. We then were able to, through the same data processing, to orchestrate, to manage huge amounts of information in terms of the Iraqi force disposition and all the other information that a modern military machine needs to know. Get that information out to every unit down to the individual tactical unit, keep track of it all, allow our forces to navigate over the essentially featureless desert in such a way that the commanders knew and the individual elements knew exactly where they were, and we could put all that together, and as I said, in a manner which essentially overwhelmed the Iraqis, so they simply couldn't cope and systemically failed.
The promise of even higher technology is just on the horizon, as weapons become increasingly open to redesign and further innovations. The B-22A Osprey hybrid aircraft is a cross between a plane and a helicopter. It has a 38-foot rotor system and an engine mounted on each wing, and it can operate as a helicopter for vertical takeoff and landing, and can also resort to horizontal flight. This gives it remarkable maneuverability. The new breed of advanced tactical fighters is embodied in the structure of the F-22, with a wingspan of over 43 feet. This system can turn its rear tail flat to the airstream to act as brakes. The F-22 is a prototype aircraft that will replace the F-15 Eagle as the Air Force's fighter by the end of the 1990s. It was designed borrowing and adapting features from the F-117A and the B-2 bomber. The 1990s could easily be the decade of the forward-swept wing. Now a main feature of the experimental X-29, the design holds promise for a whole new generation of tactical fighters. Initial tests on the X-29 shows that the radical wing form produces a better performance than conventional wings, offering more maneuverability and improved slow-speed handling. The Grumman design features a variable trailing camber wing that changes its angle to optimize airflow. The Persian Gulf War validated many of our military concepts and has demonstrated that the technologies we were counting on to give us the edge has done that very successfully. But technological triumph brings in its wake a host of questions. Do high-tech weapons really mean shorter wars, less lives lost? And what happens to our deterrent strength when we find that other nations have caught up to a point where we find the same sophisticated weapons aimed at us?
That same thing is going to be an Achilles heel for us. The technology that we need now is how do you counter that precision-guided missile? Because we must mass also in future battles. How do we counter that? How do we counter the type of missiles that we use? Because you know that there are going to be third world countries, there are going to be other superpowers that saw what happened in the Persian Gulf with our high technology weapons, and they are going to be after them, and they are going to either buy them or they're going to develop them. So now it's a matter of we are going to be on the other end, and how do we defend against that? And technology is going to play a great role in our ability to defend against those types of weapons.
Deterrence at best has always meant an uneasy peace with the threat of aggression ever present in our arms. As we continue to develop new military technologies, will we evolve a new morality to match the efficacy of our modern weapons? In the last analysis, fighting can never be simply left to a machine. A gun doesn't fire without a command. Our current weapons are not just faceless innovations, but instruments of power still wielded by human hands. And to make war, to strike the first blow or the last, is still a very human decision. In the shadow of these advanced armaments, we hope to gain a new wisdom that will help us manage their lethal potential.